So, it's me again. So, anyways, it just feels weird at this point because I have a lot to say, but I just don't know if I can have a lot of time to actually say it and be, concise of that sort. Because, like 4 years ago, that was when, the whole bug was started to take hold of everything and, wreak havoc. A lot of people's lives were lost of that sort, and we never really were certain about all that in the end until it happened, I lost a friend to COVID, a guy that I'd known for quite a while, and at one point when Dad had passed away, and where I was talking about on Facebook, going to the cemetery and picking up Dad's urinal, and where he had cheered me up about it, and he felt happy that somebody was supporting me at that point. And I never realized, in about like a year or two later or so, like he was gonna die from COVID, and then my mom had lost two of her cousins to COVID, and her cousins were just about the same age as her, but yet like her aunt is still alive, and it's just one of those things, and it's just hard for me to deal with like death, of that sort. Even though I miss like Garfy and but also miss Bob and Tom, but I also miss my dad, and I miss my uncle, because one of my uncles was my godfather at that point, and he had died back in, I think it was right around towards the end of 2012 from Huntington's, and it was just a while ago that my mom had told me, like, my cousin, that she has Huntington's, and she's like, what, she's like 5 years younger than me, I'm only like 42, I'm gonna be 43, and here my cousin, who's 5 years younger than me, has Huntington's. And all they can do now, as far as any of the treatment there, is just to slow it down, but eventually it's like all her cognitive functions are gonna go away, and it's just sad at this point. And I remember it was like the last time I saw my uncle when he was alive, he was just barely there, but everybody was aware that was the terminal state where he couldn't walk or talk anymore, and then he died. But it's just one of those things. But a lot of times it was the other people that I missed at that point were somebody that I never really got to meet, and that was my grandma. I don't really have any like memories of her because I was too young. I was about like 5 or 6 months when she passed away from Sjogren's, and then my grandfather on my dad's side of the family died of lung cancer before I was born and before my brothers were born, and so he never really got to see, you know, most of his grandchildren growing up at that point. You know, and that's just the thing there. But the way people say here when it comes to that they're always still here, and it was just that whole thing with the law of attraction, law of assumption, you know, that manifestation, you know, the consciousness collective, or what you would call it, it's still the same, that we were like connected to each other of that sort. And so I can still talk to my dad, and you know, as far as that goes, because there were instances where my mom had told me about, like, where grandpa was like giving her like sort of numbers, you know, at a point when it was just about like, it was a little bit more than like a year or two after my grandpa passed away of that sort, you know. That was just the thing that I talked about when after dad had passed away, was like the after death communications, you know. And at one point, you know, where I was in the shower, and then all of a sudden it's like that song, like My Father's Eyes by Eric Clapton, like appeared in my, just like I was listening to it like that, and I hadn't heard that song in a long time, you know. You know, although my dad liked Eric Clapton a little bit, there were other instances where I was at the ship, or no, it was the galley that was off of Rosecrans near the 210, and because I went there several times with dad, and at one point, you know, because it was just me and my mom and one of my brothers, because my other brother's a vegan, and he was going to have his own food at that point, and where we had the table there, and then it's like all of a sudden, like in my mind's eye, there's dad, and like he's there sitting, like waiting, you know, for the food, like that, you know, like he was here. And there was an instance where it was at the Skirball Center that same year, you know, when it was just my mom, me, and then the other brother at that point, and here I thought I saw someone that looked like dad, you know, as far as that goes. And it was one of those songs that I was playing a bit where it was like helping me with the grieving process, you know, was that song Slipped Away by Avril Lavigne, and where I was playing that, and then I was crying my eyes out, and then that one of my brothers said it was doing great about letting it all out. I mean, here it is. It's now going to be like 6 years since dad passed away, you know. And I was promising myself that I wasn't going to talk about it too much about it. And here I am, and, you know, of that sort. But the way we handle death is just our own way of doing it. And you know, I should have gone around and reached out to that one old classmate of mine. His name's Kyle, and so he lived in the neighborhood somewhere and went to my school, but he was a year ahead of me, and so his family had owned a mortuary, you know, and so one of my old neighbors, you know, married his sister, you know, at one point, and it was another part of the whole story. Like, his mom had came to the hospital. I mean, my old neighbor's mom had came to the hospital where my dad was there, like, you know, in his final days, and kind of like meet up with him and all, and like, you know, when it came to like my aunt and uncle were meeting up with him and that sort, and you know, but it was just like how it was in that, like the final episode of, or like the next to the final episode of 6 Feet Under, you know, and that kind of thing kind of hit really close to home at that point, you know, when Nate was in the hospital for a stroke at that one point, and then everybody, you know, except for like what's her name, Brenda, you know, was assuming that he was going to be fine and all, and but just didn't work out that well at that point. And then in the end, it was like Nate had died of another stroke, you know. And at one point with 6 Feet Under, you know, where it started to feel a lot like it hit home there was when Brenda's dad had passed away. And there was the whole scene, you know, was, I keep forgetting what Brenda's mom's name was, you know, but it was Billy and Brenda were at the hospital, and you know, it was like the final days and all, and it was like that sort of thing that happened like the last couple of days when Dad was alive, and you know, and it was like going through the wave of emotions and all, because knowing that I had to prepare myself for the inevitability that Dad's going to pass away, and it was like, you know, the stages of death at that point, you know, where I see like the IV bags and the catheters and all this sort of stuff when they have that preparation for it when it happens, you know, and all the people who are the palliative nurses and doctors of that sort, and just that all they can really tell you to do is just prepare for the inevitability and also the way to handle all of it. And I feel like maybe I'm gonna have to kind of go and do it with that whole thing with more of my therapy, you know, because now it's already at that time where it's like I'm really like over the process, all this grief and all, and it was just dealing with all of it in general. Because I remember at one point was like after Bob had passed away, and it was so hard for me to get over the loss of my first pet. And I remember that one dream was like where it was probably a little bit more than like almost like more than a year. It was like, you know, enough time had passed to kind of process it, and it was like, you know, it was probably like the first time I heard, you know, thief by Our Lady Peace, and I talked about it quite often, for this one girl, Mina Kim, who had a brain tumor and passed away from a brain tumor, and she was only 7 years old, and this was back in '99. And it was like the whole thing, like, I can't see that thief that lives inside of your head, but I can be the courage that's inside your bed. I don't know what's happening, but I can't pretend, but I can be your. But at the last chorus where it finishes, I can be your, I'm here. And it was one of the songs that was processing a lot of my grief at that point, or at least just grief in a general sense of loss, like death. And because then Chantal Kreviazuk, the singer Ring Maida, his wife, had wrote a song called M for the same thing, and it was like, where it was just, sometimes she had to grab life by the horns and all this other stuff. And a lot of it was just simply like, nobody hands you a life you want on a silver platter. You have to go out and get it yourself at that point. And there are certain people that just don't know how to do that. Just don't know how that it is. But it's really about like looking at it inwardly instead of like outwardly. It requires a lot of introspection and that sort. And a lot of times I felt like maybe I was just being a bit too introspective and not being aware of what my immediate surroundings of that sort. But just to find the balance and harmony of like awareness and introspection and all, and but it's the whole thing with like law of attraction, law of assumption, manifestation of that sort, and it's really about everyone is me pushed out, And at one instance, when I was in high school, I had said something to myself about like, why does everybody seem to act like me in some ways, as far as like my good traits or bad traits of that sort. But it was really like that concept of everybody's me pushed out, and it's really about that there are certain people that have like these innate desires. It is desire of fulfillment in all areas of life of that sort, whether it's love or wealth or health or something, and it's just that point. And the fact that I just didn't really know how to create this sort of the wish fulfillment of that sort, about what it is that, who it is I want to be with, that sort, and I can create this sort of thing with that guy J2, because even though he was going through this devastating losses and all, and even though I'm not speaking to him at this point, but I want to be there for him. I want to be this guy that he gets to be with, like at the end of the movie, or like towards the end of the movie. It's like where we meet up, and it's strongly implied that he and I are like going to be together as we're like walking together in the sunset, like that sort of thing, like stereotypically these movies or TV shows where they have, it is implied like a happy ending of that sort. So, anyways, guess that's probably it. So, talk to you guys later.